The word best begins with the letter B, and so do the two teams that are the best in the league. That is the Bills and the Tampa Bay Bucks.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, folks? It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the barbershop here on Locked On NFL, along with my buddy Kevin Ostracker here from Locked On Ravens. We are going to take you around the National Football League with the use of clips from the local experts from the Locked On Podcast Network, and we are going to put our finger on the pulse of the team and tell you exactly what's going on around the league. We do that every day, man, and you can find us and catch us wherever you get your podcast. Just make sure you tap in to that location wherever you watch or listen each and every day. And shout out to the everydayers who join us each and every day. We appreciate you. And if it's your first time, we're glad to have you. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. All right, here's where Ostracker and I are going to go. And where we're going to end up, where we're going to start, and where we're going to end up, rather. The real bad is in Miami. Ooh, they are awful, in my opinion. All right, looking okay, but in a tough spot. There's a 2-0 team in Cincinnati that is in a tough spot, despite the fact that they're 2-0. That's a reverse from the past, where they've actually looked good and started out 0-2 a few times. But we're going to get to the very top of this. Call it the good and the bad of the first 2 weeks of the National Football League. Kevin Ostracker, there's no other place I want to start than the team that won last night in a game against the Houston Texans, and that is the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, we're not going to name all the good teams. There are other good teams out there. The Chargers are very, very good, right? Because I think we talked about them yesterday. But the Tampa Bay Bucks look like the real deal, man, and they had a nice comeback win on the road against the Houston Texans.
Man, Baker Mayfield is something else. He is something else. And look, that's the type of quarterback, and there are many throughout the league, but Baker's such a unique player, and that's a guy that, I'd want to go to battle with each and every single week if I was a player. Just the grit that he has, the determination. I know everyone's talking about the scramble he had, getting out of pressure and making things happen, leading the Bucs down and winning that game. Like, Baker's for real. The Bucs are for real. And I know we were talking in the offseason about Tampa. Both of us were in agreement that they were the clear favorite in that division. It's the next step for them, which is, can they be mentioned in the same vein as, even if it's not the Eagles, maybe of the Lions or the Commanders, that second tier, I guess, of NFC teams. And so far through 2 weeks, they have answered that bell and honestly are at the level right now of the Philadelphia Eagles. So it's been a great story. Obviously, Emeka Egbuka has been incredible. 3 touchdowns in his first 2 games as a rookie there. And the crazy part to me is they still have guys out. Like, they're doing this without Chris Godwin and Tristan Wirfs and getting contributions from other guys that are on their roster. So, look, Tampa has been incredible so far this season. And I think if you're a fan of the Buccaneers, you have to be feeling pretty good.
Don't worry, Eagle fans. We're going to get to you, and I'm going to tell you why I did not mention them earlier. We're going to get to you, Eagles, but this will explain it. They're also in a division that has 2 bad teams, I believe, in New Orleans and Carolina, and then another team that they should probably beat, but is still a pretty good team in the Atlanta Falcons, and they're trying to figure it out. Very, very similar to the team I'm going to mention. Unlike Philly, where they have Washington and Dallas that are obviously tough teams to play, and then they have their first place schedule. The Buffalo Bills are the other team that I talked about. The reason why I'm mentioning them is because, well, they're in a horrible division, a division where they don't seem to have anybody who can get in their way. And that means they might have to play all of their games at home in the playoffs. Here's my man Joe Marino talking about their victory the other day.
The Buffalo Bills' maturity shined in their blowout win over the New York Jets, where it simply came down to this. The Buffalo Bills are a Super Bowl contender, and the Jets are in year 1 of a new regime. The Buffalo Bills were able to blow out the Jets, and Josh Allen didn't score a touchdown. It was just about the Jets beating themselves, the Bills controlling the game with their rushing offense. James Cook adds 2 rushing touchdowns and really had an electric game. And the Bills defense also bounces back in a big way after plenty of questions came out of the Ravens game in week 1. But the maturity shines, James Cook shines, and the Bills defense bounces back in week 2 with their win over the Jets.
Nothing like a team handling their business and beating the team they're supposed to beat, KO.
Yeah, and that's the big thing with the Bills, right? It's you don't necessarily need Josh Allen to go superhuman to pull off a big win. And that's what the good teams, the great teams, the elite teams do at the NFL level. It's, yeah, you know what, your quarterback, when you need him to, more often than not, he can step up to the plate. But sometimes when it's just a worse team than you or a team you should easily beat, you know, yeah, you ride your running back and James Cook and some of your other position players, and you get the job done. And Josh can kind of sit back there and, you know, just chill and hang out. And it's good for the Bills because, again, there was not a game in week 1. There was nothing that happened for the Bills in week 1. You know,
right.
Nothing. There was no game. There was nothing that happened there. So good first win for the Bills this season. No, I'm kidding. It was two great wins for the Bills in 2 different ways. Too obviously came back against Baltimore in that week 1 game. You showed grit and determination there, and then you kind of flexed your muscles a little bit in week number 2. And you know, that's also what good teams do, right? They win in a lot of different ways, and they have a lot of different ways that they can impose their will. And we saw the Bills do that in back-to-back weeks.
I'm glad you just mentioned that because that team I said that I was going to get to, the Philadelphia Eagles, did the exact same thing on the road against KC. Interesting take here by Lou DiBiase, and we're going to get to it. But I always say when you win championships, your DNA changes a little bit. And his response to how they played this weekend shows that. Listen to Louis.
The Philadelphia Eagles aren't elite in the way that you've been used to watching NFL teams be elite in the last decade, but elite is elite. This team has historic clutch gene. They lean on their run game and their defense like old school football, and it gets the job done, and it did it again today against the Kansas City Chiefs. Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, the 2 most clutch players in this football team, they cannot figure out the blitz in the passing game all game long until it matters most. All-out pressure. Jalen Hurts puts it on the money to Devontae Smith, who goes up and makes a contested catch that won them the football game over Trent McDuffie, one of the best cornerbacks in football. You look at Drew Makuba's pick as well in the end zone when Travis Kelce dropped the football, only up by 3. This team just has historic clutch gene. Things don't always work, but it always works when it has to, and that's why they're a championship caliber football team, and it's why they're 2-0 again in 2025. For more, subscribe to Locked On Eagles.
He's right, but I disagree with him. And let me tell you why. He's exactly right in how he described the Eagles and how they had that clutch gene. Where he's wrong is he was always looking from the outside looking in, and it looked like the teams like the Chiefs that were always doing it was lucky, or they had help, or the other team just folded. But when you're in the driver's seat, this is exactly what great teams do. You know what? We'll figure it out. Just keep going. We'll win it in the end. We'll make the plays that we have to. So it's just a matter of perspective. I think this is exactly what great teams have always done. It's just that when you are the one covering the great team, it looks different.
Yeah. And to me, that, you know, we talked about Philly all offseason, that they lost some guys. We're going to have to make up that production with a bunch of young players. And you know, we're still talking about a team right now that is 2-0. And again, like all that matters is wins, right? I mean, it doesn't matter how you get them as long as you get them. Now, of course, you want to clear up some trends. And I know that the Eagles being 2-0 is not the biggest story in Philadelphia by a long shot right now. But you know what? That's an advantage that they end up utilizing to their advantage. It's a legal play, and they're going to keep doing it. And, you know, Nick Sirianni's been very apparent as well in his answers that, you know what, hey, even if there are some false starts there, don't referees miss penalties in every single play? Like, isn't that a thing that happens? So, again, that's a whole different conversation. But
yeah.
For this Eagles team, we know they're talented. I know there's a lot of conversation about Jalen Hurts right now and A.J. Brown and you know, the whole 9 yards there. I'm not worried about Philly, and no one should be. We're not talking about a team that's started 0-2. We're going to get to that in a couple of minutes here. The Eagles are 2-0. They're doing their thing. I'm not sure it's going to be necessarily as dominant as a year for them as it was last year, but that doesn't mean they can't go and win the thing again. I mean, I right now, I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, they're taking a step back," and they're doing they're 2-0. Like,
yep.
It doesn't matter how you win the games as long as you win them. That's how you win a Super Bowl. You can win a Super Bowl 2-0 and you still get your trophy and you still get your rings. So that to me is the big thing with Philly. I'm fine with them.
All right, we're about to challenge. It doesn't matter how you win as long as you're undefeated. We're about to challenge that when we talk about the Bengals the entire next segment here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make every day feel an everyday drive like anything, but from smooth handling to intuitive controls, Mazda is the absolute truth. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail. That's right, because you make every move count more. That's right. Impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's show is also sponsored and brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes and see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I was paying for one subscription 3 times. Monarch Money caught it. Me and my wife saved money. Now she loves the app. That's right. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, let's get to it, man. Kevin Ostracker is going to take us through the AFC North. Baltimore won, got back on track this week. Looked a little shaky at times against Cleveland. I ain't going to bring that up, but you actually, you got the W, right? I guess they were taking it a little easy on my man Joe, who came back home, Joe Flacco, of course. But the Jaguars, my team that I cover, went to Cincinnati and should have won the game, honestly, but they did not. Referees, as well as their own miscues, allowed the Bengals to get to 2-0. But all is not well for the Bengals, because it looks like they lost Joe Burrow for a minimum of 3 months and maybe the entire year. He has a bad turf toe injury and he needs surgery. Here's James Rapine with how you can be 2-0 and still have a pretty bad outlook for the rest of the season.
Joe Burrow could miss the entire season. Joe Burrow might not be back this year. You start 2-0 and you get off to this start that everyone was talking about that you needed to do. You needed to start fast, and they did it. The first time in the Zach Taylor era, they get to 2-0, but everyone listening that's a Bengals fan would certainly rather be 0-2 and have Joe Burrow, because at minimum, you're missing him for 11 games.
All right, Kevin Ostracker, we don't like to see players get hurt, whether we're rivals with them or not. We love the competition, like to see guys living their dreams. We'll make that very, very clear. But got a little easier, in my opinion, for the teams in the AFC North, including your Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would much rather have Joe Burrow healthy. Those Ravens-Bengals games last year were 2 of the most electric games of the season, in my opinion. And, the league is better when everybody's healthy, like especially when the top quarterbacks in the league are healthy. So I hope he's able to get back as soon as possible, maybe even exceed that timeline and get back a little quicker. But we know how difficult turf toe can be, especially when it's severe, is what Joe Burrow suffered. And, in terms of, it doesn't matter how you win and, the win is a win and all that. Well, there's an asterisk that says you have to have your star players in order to have that. And so obviously it's going to be a different look for the Bengals, but this is kind of the conversation I have a lot on Locked On Ravens with Lamar Jackson. And if he ever were to go down, and obviously knock on wood, that doesn't happen for him again, because I know the Ravens have had to go through stretches without him. But with your backup quarterback, and Jake Browning obviously did enough to to take over for Joe and lead that team to a win on Sunday against the Jaguars. But let's say Joe is able to come back and, after those 11 games, and he comes back in December and the Bengals are fighting for a playoff spot and Jake Browning has led them there. That's the best case scenario. That's, to me, why I think it's important to invest in the backup quarterback spot. The Ravens signed Cooper Rush to a pretty big deal for a backup quarterback, but the reason being, if a quarterback goes down, misses time, and is able to come back at some point during that same season, it's the backup's job to at least keep that team floating and not have their season sink. And so for Jake Browning, his only job now is not to win every game. It's not to go out there and win MVP. It's to keep the Bengals alive until hopefully, and maybe Joe doesn't return this year, but hopefully until Joe is able to come back. Because if a backup quarterback in those 3 months, 11 games goes, 7-4, that keeps the Bengals plenty alive. If he goes 2-9, then Joe Burrow comes back. There's no reason to even bring him back at that point. So backup quarterback is, I think, a lot more important than some people give it credit for. But, it's tough because, we were on the Bengals all offseason about, hey, you got to get off to a fast start. If you don't do it, it's such a bad look for you. They did what they were supposed to. And, unfortunately, your star quarterback goes down. And James is right. I would much rather be 0-2 with Joe Burrow than 2-0 without him for the next 3 months.
This is just simple. The goal in this is to win a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow gives you an exponentially better chance to do that than Jake Browning. It doesn't mean Jake Browning can't galvanize this team and they can coach up and do some things that's specific for his skill set that will allow them to win some games. But you have to have confidence that a guy can actually get you to the promised land. And this is where having the rest of your team also be very, very sound in a lot of areas. This is where not having a bunch of holdouts all the time. This is where spreading the wealth and drafting really, really well, because now you're going to be less dependent on one guy to be Superman. You need the other parts to step up, and that's the challenge for the Cincinnati Bengals, and it always has been. Real quick on the Pittsburgh Steelers, surprised that they gave up 30 points in 2 straight games, even though some of it was on the offense and special teams against Seattle and against the New York Jets.
Yes and no. It's a lot of new pieces in Pittsburgh right now. It's a lot of new pieces. And so, you go through 2 weeks and you have some preseason, and not everybody plays in the preseason, especially around the league. But, I was expecting a little more from that defense for sure. I mean, I think you have enough talent at all 3 levels to avoid that. And I think, honestly, he's a rookie, but Derek Harmon going down in that preseason game and him not being available early, I think Pittsburgh was going to rely on him a lot to be a big presence in the middle of that D-line. But again, you can't chalk it up to one player being out. They have enough talent without Derek Harmon to go out there and put together better football games than they have. And again, the Jets, not necessarily this world-beating offense. It's like a top 5 unit in the league each and every week. I mean, we saw what the Bills were able to do with them in week 2. Seahawks, you got Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba, but Kenneth Walker's there too. They're outside of those guys though. Who's making plays? It just feels like if it was against the Ravens or the Bills or the Bengals with Joe Burrow or the Eagles, it'd be a different conversation. Okay, yeah, those are really good offenses. It makes sense. Yeah, sure. But we're talking about the Jets and the Seahawks, right? That to me, I think gives you a little pause of is this defense, or are we behind the glory days of this Steelers defense in this era? It's concerning, right? And that's not just me speaking as a guy that covers the Ravens. That in general, I think, is the consensus.
Yep, I think it is. So I was going to call this show The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but the Bengals can't be called bad because they're 2-0, and they did win the game the other day after Joe Burrow left. They were behind, so that's a critical thing to remember. But the ugly does exist. And it exists in a pretty place, and that's where we're going to start. And that's South Florida. All that beautiful weather and that terrible football team that they have on the field down there. We'll discuss that and 2 more teams that ain't far behind them in just a second here on Locked On NFL. First and foremost, man, it is football season, and it is all about FanDuel. The action is here. It's already started. It's hot and heavy, man. And they're making sure at FanDuel you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is for real, man. And if you like to start the game knowing what the odds are or waiting until it kind of plays out a little bit and then doing it in-game or in-game, well, FanDuel can help you with that as well. And you can put some Skrilla in your pocket. So are you ready to play? If so, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Pushing along here with Kevin Ostracker here on, let me say this, right? Kevin, it's Ostracker or Ostracker. So I'm going to tell you, he knows why I'm saying Ostracker. It's probably really Ostracker, but people think his name is Kevin Ostrich, and it is not.
Yes.
His name is Kevin Ostracker or Filibuster. That's what we're going to call him here,
Yeah,
right?
there you go, right there.
Yeah,
there you go.
yeah. We'll leave it right there, man. So I had to make sure Kevin, you know why I said it that way. So I'll have to go back and do all that extra work after the show's over with. But really talk, man. Miami. I thought coming into this season they would have some problems. You already got some finger pointing between quarterback and coach and everybody. And now it seems like a team that's sitting there just waiting to get fired. Listen to Cal Krabs.
The Miami Dolphins fell to 0-2 on the season with a 33-27 loss to the New England Patriots at home. And miscues are the name of the game. The Dolphins had 2 possessions in the final 4 minutes with the ball and a chance to take the lead or score. And they had 4 procedural penalties on those 2 possessions that killed both drives and set the Dolphins back behind the sticks. It's unsustainable football, and it's frankly inexcusable for a team that should be hanging their hats on playing with year 4 in Mike McDaniel's system. If this cannot get itself sorted out, these Dolphins are consistently going to be fighting upstream in 2025, and the pressure is firmly on.
They're terrible. What do you think about them? And I'm going to tell you something else after you tell me that. What somebody needs to do, and they need to do it quick, fast, and in a hurry. Go ahead and tell me what you think about Miami.
Yeah, they're not good. And it's difficult because, Tua has not necessarily shown that he can lead a team here. I know, his injury situation has been very difficult over the course of his career, but, you have Tyreek Hill, you have Jalen Waddle, and this isn't just a this year thing for Miami either, right? I mean, this is, as Kyle said there, this is year 4 for Mike McDaniel. Stuff like this, some of the procedural issues and other miscues that are very, very easy to correct, it feels like, shouldn't be happening. And, I think when we're talking in October or November, I'm not sure Mike McDaniel's still going to be there. I'm not sure Tyreek Hill is still going to be there despite all the reports. I mean, I think that big change is coming in Miami, and it's a team that I believed in for many years over the Mike McDaniel era. I talked about how I was out on them this year. I said, they hurt me enough. I believe in them and they hurt me enough. But it goes to teams that you had like Jalen Ramsey, Calais Campbell, like star defenders on, you also have even still like Devon Achane on there, who is a crazy talent at the running back position. And you still can't really get anything going and you start 0-2. And look, the stats when teams start 0-2, it's not very pretty. I think Miami would at least have had to make the playoffs to have Mike McDaniel save his job. Obviously, the season's not over. There's a long way to go, but it has not been a good start at all for Miami this year.
Somebody is going to trade for Tyreek Hill. The best team that probably should do it is the team that he came from in Kansas City. That hurts Baltimore. I thought it might be the Chargers, but I see their 3 receivers, and I'm like, I don't think they're going to disrupt that. They look pretty decent to me, but they could be another team. Baltimore needs to probably go ahead and trade for him just to keep him out of other people's hands, because Buffalo is another dangerous team. If the Dolphins are dumb enough, they traded Wes Welker back in the day to the Patriots. If they're dumb enough to trade him to Buffalo, Buffalo's going to walk to the Super Bowl. So what do you think about that?
It makes sense. I mean, look, Kansas City started 0-2 as well. And again, we know the stats, although I have a lot more belief and trust in Kansas City to get out of that hole than I do Miami right now. Although, when it comes to Baltimore, Wig, do you know how many years we in Baltimore have been trying to get out of that conversation for finally?
I know
They're drafting and developing Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, even Tez Walker has 3
and you got DeAndre
catches.
Hopkins. I know
all
it,
three of them. DeAndre Hopkins, he's not washed. He put out the tweet, Unk still got it, and yeah, he does, because the Ravens finally have gotten out of that. And it was for years, Ravens fans, it was, oh, we're gonna go Julio Jones or Tyreek Hill himself, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, like all these star receivers that are available. Go ahead and put them on the Ravens. They're finally not in that conversation anymore. It feels so good. And it feels like the Chiefs kind of have to be in that conversation because you're not getting Rashee Rice back for a little bit. Xavier Worthy, that whole situation. I mean, even when he does get back, I think you still need a little more juice. It makes a lot of sense. I almost tweeted out after week 1, man, when's that Tyreek Hill to the Chiefs trade hitting? Because it feels like that's the inevitable destination for Tyreek eventually.
Watch out for the Packers too. I'm telling you, man, these teams are going to be like, you know what? We just going to go all out and do it. And we're going to keep. What if Green Bay thinks Jerry might try to get him? See, this is what you got to guard against, because he could totally change the team. Now, some more of the ugly. Let's go to Nashville and talk to my man Tyler Rowland, Tennessee Titans, and Locked on Titans and Locked on NFL in the morning.
You want some Monday morning optimism, Titans fans? Cam Ward is the guy. And look, I know it's hard to hear this right now. The Titans are 0-2. They've lost bad games back-to-back weeks. Season doesn't look like it's going the way that most have hoped. But I think if you sit back and you have a little perspective, you think long-term, the reality is the Titans were never making the playoffs this year. The Titans probably weren't going to be even a playoff contending team at any point during this season. The only thing that we needed to know from this year is that Cam Ward was the guy and that the Titans didn't waste the number 1 overall pick on a bust quarterback. And through 2 weeks, after going through all of the tape and going through the data and all of that through this morning, I could not be more encouraged about Cam Ward. And I think while the Titans may need a new head coach and a new left tackle and a star edge rusher, there's a lot of needs. Make no mistake about it. The hardest position in football to find is a real franchise quarterback. And I think
this is why when people say, build your team first, and then get your quarterback. Well, that's supposedly what the Titans have been doing. They've been building their team. Now they got their quarterback, and we find out they need to build their team because they didn't do that well either. When you get a chance to get a quarterback, you take him. I don't care if you have a wide receiver, if you have an offensive line. You don't get to do this in a certain order. Those guys don't come around, and I think Cam is for real too.
Oh, yeah, and, it's – Tennessee is a team that, yes, we didn't expect them to really do anything this season. And I think you can take away a lot of positives even from a year that you're not making the playoffs if you're a young team that's competing, or I guess when you have a young quarterback that's competing here and trying to establish himself. And we've seen that crossbody throw, that's some of that greatness that, you can maybe a little reckless, but even still,
it's going to bite you. It's fool's gold. It's going to bite you. I'm telling you, don't keep doing it, Cam.
Even still, I think that for Tennessee, yes, you can call their start quote unquote bad, but it's not nearly as bad as what the Dolphins or the Chiefs have done this season. I think Tennessee has a clear step plan here where you're right. You got to build up the rest of the team and you got to figure out the weapons around Cam Ward and everything else and the defense. But Miami right now is all right, they might have to just tear it all down. Kansas City, we know that they're not getting any younger. So I think that out of the 3 that we've talked about, Tennessee, they're a team that if they play their cards right, that obviously is if, they could have a bright future out there if Cam Ward can continue to hopefully grow.
All right, so Miami is ugly and they can't change it right now. And they're real ugly, right? They're we need a facelift. The Titans, it's ugly, but hey, we're trending. We had a baby and the baby's really cute. So the next generation will be fine, right? And then there's the Carolina Panthers that said, hold my beer, because I think they're somewhere stuck in the middle. They think they're pretty, and they probably aren't. Here's my man, Julian Council here for Locked on Panthers.
It was almost one of the greatest comebacks in Carolina Panthers history as the Panthers down 27-3, had multiple scoring drives late in the game, got an onside kick, and had an opportunity to come back and win in the desert in Arizona, but it fell just short. And you can't help but wonder, had they not come out and fallen behind 10-0 with those 2 turnovers to start off the game, could Carolina have won this game this afternoon as they dropped to 0-2? A lot of positive to take away, like Bryce Young's performance, especially in the second half. It looked like an improved defensive performance, not giving up 200 yards on the ground today and getting some pressure on Arizona, and then just the overall fight. But it does beg the question, why does it take 6 quarters for Dave Canales' team to finally wake up this season in 2025? So some positives, but 0-2 is 0-2. For more on the Carolina Panthers, check us out over on Locked On Panthers.
And if that ain't the microcosm that they're in, a microcosm of what they're in, there's enough to be positive about. I mean, we did this and we did that, but I can't figure out why we do it this, because that's kind of what bad teams do. That's what Jacksonville did for so long. How do you feel about Carolina? Great job by Julian, by the way. But how you feel about Carolina?
Yeah. They're a team, and I think again 0-2 is a lot of people were kind of picking them as their dark horse to maybe make some noise in that division, and obviously 0-2 is a really tough hole to come out of. But yeah, I mean, look, Bryce Young has shown that, the bad kind of play stretch that he had last season is kind of in the rearview mirror here. I have a lot of confidence he can continue to improve. They have a lot of young players that can hopefully step up. And again, like I wasn't expecting personally a lot from Carolina this season. So yes, they're 0-2, but you can take away positives. And although it definitely hasn't been pretty and hasn't been perfect over there, that's another team. It's not exactly the same as Tennessee, but it's kind of in the same category as hey, you know what? It's all right if you don't make the playoffs this season. You have a little young core you can build around. And, I think in a couple of years, that team could be challenging for, maybe the NFC South crown or maybe a wild card spot and make some noise that way.
Yep, you're right. And we're going to keep talking about it here on Locked On NFL. We do it twice a day, by the way. Tyler Rowland, the Madman, will jump on you early in the morning and wake you up like a double shot of espresso. And then you get what you get right here in the barbershop, man, where we just sit here and just let the stories tell themselves. Let the people talk, man, because the people that cover the team every day on the Locked On Podcast Network are the gems and the jewels. They're the local experts that know these teams like anybody else. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please check out the newsletter, the Locked On Podcast newsletter at Locked On Podcasts /LockedOnPodcast.com/newsletter for even more information about our network and everything that's going on around all of the stations. We appreciate you spending 32 minutes with us today. For Kevin Ostracker and Tony Wiggins, we'll see you next time here on Locked On NFL.